Welcome to Power Up with NSA North Texas, a show about finding, hearing, and maximizing valuable insights from some of the world's leading business and lifestyle speakers. Each week, international keynote speaker and National Speakers Association North Texas chapter president Betti sits down with some of the most exciting speakers this side of the globe to hear from these subject matter experts what's making a difference in business today and learn all there is to know about people, profits, and productivity in business from some of the world's best motivators. This is Power Up with NSA North Texas. And now, here's your host, Betti.
I'm your host, Betti, President of National Speakers Association North Texas Chapter, and I want to welcome you to our show today. The NSA, National Speakers Association, is the premier organization for professional speakers. Our members reach audiences as consultants, coaches, authors, humorists, motivators, and we do it every day around the globe. This show is about some of the cutting-edge topics, the issues, the questions you might have around business, and we bring to you our own subject matter experts from NSA North Texas to give you some of the answers. You're going to hear about some of the answers from our own subject matter experts here in Dallas, Texas. And today, I am so excited to have Miss Diana Gatz, who's my guest. Hello, Diana.
Hello, Betti.
It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Diana she's a powerhouse, guys. Diana is a growth specialist. She's a business advisor. She is one of the few women in executive management, global management operations in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Her 25 years in corporate America, coupled with about 10 plus years as a founder of VPT Enterprise, have positioned Diana as a problem solver, a strategist, and an advisor for small to medium companies. Diana guides companies, organizations, businesses through the development of metrics to achieve improvement in processes, people, and profits, and she leverages golf as a tool to gain credibility and inclusion. So for all you golfers out there today, you're going to love this because everything I've discovered the last few days is about golf with Diana.
Well, not quite everything.
But I love the analogy that she does. You're going to hear about this. She's a supporter of women-led endeavors and organizations that assist women. As a 20-year member of LPGA Amateurs, which was formerly EWGA, Diane is active locally and nationally. She was the EWGA board member and immediate past president of EWGA Foundation. Correct. Diana believes golf is a resource for business and fun. She also assists in bringing women back into the workforce as an instructor for the Christian Women's Job Corporation. Keeping her relevant, here's a few other things that she does. She's the founder and board member of Social Media Breakfast Dallas. She's the director of our own NSA North Texas chapter. She's our director of technology. She co-chairs the Volunteers of America Women Golf event, and she is the chair of the LPGA Women on Par Scholarship Selection Committee. I'm happy you're here. So our topic today with Diana is growth doesn't just happen. No. Growth does not just happen. Diana is going to share the business side of Golfer Gal. That's what you're called, Golfer Gal?
Yes.
And why business growth just doesn't happen out of the blue. So Diana, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm excited to be here.
Good. So. I'm thrilled to have you. So talk to me. What is a growth specialist?
Okay. Well, as you just said, business growth doesn't just happen. No. Okay. And so the companies that I work with or the organizations tend to be small to medium-sized businesses that have plateaued. They're not getting that year-over-year growth that they want to be successful and so forth. So these are the groups I work with. Interestingly enough, several years ago, an individual by the name of James Fisher did some research that he subsequently validated with a lady named Lori Taylor called Stages of Growth. And in the book he's put together and the research and validation they've done, they have determined there are 7 stages that businesses who start with one person, and grow to as many as 500 people will go through these 7 stages. Now, we're not going to talk about the 7 stages, but we're going to talk about the 3 components three components that are really important to that evolution: people, process, and profit. So that's what we're going to talk about that gets us to year-over-year growth, and that's what a business specialist focuses on.
All right, so I'm anxious. Okay, so tell me about how you assist your clients with the people, process, and profits. Let's start with people.
Well, people is the best place to start, particularly if you think about the adage, people are your biggest asset.
So true.
And so many companies either start there and forget about it, or in some cases, quite frankly, just never really think about it. So my go-to tool in terms of people is the use of assessments. And there are any number of assessments out there. There are a couple that I specialize in from a group out of Arizona called Target Training International. But the first and most important value that comes from, let's say, you taking an assessment is you find out things about yourself. Now, it's not that you don't know you, but they're presented in a way that makes you kind of reflect on it. And when you do that, you have this better understanding of yourself. The other thing that happens is that as we share the language and the verbiage that goes with the assessment, obviously people are different. And so you come to recognize those who are similar to you and those who are different.
Right.
The ones that are different are traditionally the ones that you may have had trouble communicating with in the past. You didn't know why, you just knew that you could never get on the same page with this person, okay? Well, once you understand that now they're probably opposite of you, and you have to think about communicating the way they communicate, you can meet them at least halfway.
To get the job done.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And now you can have a conversation and really accomplish something. So the assessments are also used not only for individuals, but in groups. So as you would put together a team for a special project, you want that team to be as successful as possible. And so you want balance. Now, with balance, there can be a little bit of controversy because you do have people who are
balance is
opposites.
good.
Exactly.
You don't want all the same. You don't want a bunch of Betties in the room.
Well, and the thing is, not that you don't want a bunch of Bettys, but if Betti thinks one way, Diana thinks another, Zach thinks another, that's where the balance comes from. So
That's
it's
the beauty.
amazing what you can do. The other thing that I do with the assessments is make sure you have the right person in the right spot. So one of the things, and it sounds a little complicated when you talk about it, but it really is so simple when you think about it, is lay out the roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities for a position in detail. Not just a quick job description, but in detail. And then you look at who the stakeholders are. So in other words, if I'm considering you for a position, does that position report to one person and interface with another 5? Who are all those stakeholders? And we want to make sure that we do what's called benchmarking so all the stakeholders are on the same page. Because if they're not, you're going to come on board.
Not going to work.
And yeah, I'm going to think you're doing a great job, and this person maybe not so much. So we use it for right person in right spot, and the same thing when it comes to hiring.
I love it. That makes so much sense.
And then the last part, or the next part, is the process.
Yeah, let's go to process.
And so process to me is absolutely critical. And if you think back to where I talked about the 7 stages of growth, if a company has, let's say, 250 employees, they're around stage 6. But what the research has also shown is that process-wise, they may be back on stage 1 or 2 or 3. They're way behind where they need to be. So what I like to do when I work with my clients is break process into as small pieces as possible, and then see what data we have, what's been measured, and we look at that and say, okay, now how can we improve this piece, adding these pieces together. I had a client several years ago where they, from when you get the lead as a salesperson to when it turned into the first shipment, there were like 8 steps in this process that went through 8 different departments, not to mention the client themselves.
Right.
When we first started, the average time, which means there was less and more, the average time was 121 days. That's 4 months.
Wow.
When we finished, and it took us not finished, but when we got to the third year, that number was 19 days as an average, because we had taken each of the pieces and looked at them and made them better, which of course then made the whole better. It's amazing.
It was worth the time, though.
Oh,
it
absolutely.
was absolutely worth the time.
And it goes
effort.
back to sometimes people think things can happen just like that. It took us 3 years to get there, but think of the improvement.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that once you've gone through a process, let's say it's not going to take 3 years anymore, it's going to take a much shorter period of time, do you have to start again? You're always continuing,
Absolutely.
improving your
Absolutely.
processes, always.
Right.
So if you get that in your team, in your company's culture and mind, that it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because we're actually becoming more efficient and effective, but we're going to keep doing it.
Exactly. Which is why when I answer when we talk about metrics in a few minutes, I'll explain why that's so important. So.
I'm in total agreement on this, and I'm sure golf takes a process too. But we'll talk about that coming up. We're going to talk about that. Okay, let's go to your third P, which is profit.
Okay, so one would think that if you have the right people in the right spot, you're helping your people develop, and you have your processes in place and doing what you just said, you're continuously looking at them, that the profits would be where you want them to be. And in many cases, that's true. But what also happens is when the profits end up being where you want them to be, complacency sets in. And there's the tendency then to just kind of not look at some of the details of profit like you would have looked at before.
Yes.
So the key to profits is really being vigilant about looking at them and not moving into that complacency situation.
That makes sense. That makes sense. When things are good, money's fine. Oh, we don't have to worry about it anymore. No.
You are.
No, that is so
But that
true.
happens more often than not.
It does. It does. Okay, so how does board facilitation integrate with your growth specialist role? Tell me about that.
Okay, well, that one's fun because when you think about when most of us started, we may have had mentors. We may have done a lot of networking. As we evolve through our career or our business or the organization we're affiliated with, we may even have moved into mastermind groups. And each of those brought their own level of benefit to us. Because if you think about the adage of you don't know what you don't know, you needed those resources to be able to learn and develop.
Yes.
Where board facilitation comes in for me is that now as a business owner or executive in a business or whatever, is you want a more formal structure for your learning. So you want to be on a board of either peers that are not in the same industry, but peers in terms of title or organization or whatever, and that's usually an advisory board. So I am a facilitator for those, and the board members, the benefit they get is, first of all, it's more structured. There's not the tendency to maybe wander off into other topics.
True.
The other part of it, though, is each time we meet, which is on a monthly basis, there are commitments made by each board member. When they come back the next month, they have accountability to the other board members to have met that commitment. And over time, what we found is the commitments are met at a much higher level than if it's a more informal group.
That's right. It's raising the bar, isn't it? It's kind of raising the bar. And the higher sometimes I found would you raise your bar, it's amazing. People always live up to it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you just keep raising the bar, and people are going to live up to that. And that was like, wow. Well, it's not such a big deal.
Well, it's like the old expression of BHAG, which is big, hairy ass goal or audacious goal, whichever A you want to put with it. But yeah, you put the goal up there, and just like they said, people meet it.
It's true.
But they wouldn't have expected to if they hadn't put the goal there.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so tell me about the term that you referred to as the Metrics Maven.
Okay. We've already kind of alluded to it in 2 or 3 parts of this conversation already, which is, to me, metrics, and I use them interchangeably with the word KPIs, key performance indicators, are the absolute critical foundation to a business. In this case, the adage you need to think about is if it's not measured, it can't be improved.
So true.
So we talked about goals just a minute ago. If you set a high goal, people can achieve it. If you don't set a goal, what have you really accomplished? So where I work with the businesses then is we'll go through at different points and set goals. And it may be in an area that they've never measured before. So you don't exactly know what the goal is, but you pick something that's reasonable. And then on a periodic basis, usually monthly, but it could be weekly or quarterly, you're going to measure the actual to the goal. So of course, two things are going to happen. You're either going to be achieving the goal, which is a good thing, or there's going to be a gap. Well, the gap is the huge, because that's where the improvement comes. You're going to take the gap, and by Six Sigma terminology, you're going to look for root cause and figure out why you're not meeting the goal. Once you determine that root cause, obviously you put corrective measures in place, and now when you're measuring, you presumably see some improvement, and you're back to attaining the goal. The other thing that you want to do with metrics or key performance indicators is back to year over year. So year one, your goal may have been 50, whatever 50 was. Right. Well, you achieved it. So maybe next year the goal is 60, and maybe the year after the goal is 70. But you're continually improving the goal, but you couldn't do that if you didn't have metrics.
I love that. And that's so true. That's so true. It's not scary. It's not a scary thing. People might think metrics are scary. They're not.
No.
You just need
and when you think about even people and performance, if the measurements that or if what you're measuring me on for my performance review or what I do in my position, if that can be as specific as possible, it's better for both of us.
I love that. Okay. All right. So you've had quite a few clients. Tell me about some of the successes with your clients.
Okay. Well, I'm actually going to start with one where in this book called Timeless Principles of Exceptional Business, a little bit to spit out there, I have a chapter in the book that's actually very similar to today that talks about growth just doesn't happen. And in that particular case, the success relates to process. And so this company was a smaller one I'd worked with. They'd been plateaued at $3 million for years. The father retired, and the son took over the business. So obviously the son wanted some growth in the business. So we looked at a number of things and finally determined that where we really needed to start was with the sales process. So as we refined it pretty significantly, or defined it, might be another way to think about it, we said, here's what we need to do. So within 3 years, the business had grown from 3 million to 5 million. Now, the other thing that's incredible about this is at the point...
That's wonderful.
I know. But the other thing that's incredible, and I think in a way is almost bigger success, is that at the 3 million level, one customer represented 70% of their business.
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
Yeah,
really. That can make you vulnerable real quick.
Exactly. And by the time they had grown to the 5 million level, that customer was like 45% of their business. So every bit of new growth plus some other was from other than that one customer.
Amazing.
So huge, absolutely huge.
That's amazing. So let's talk about Diana a little bit. Let's talk about you. What makes you different? When I was preparing for this podcast, I was researching Diana, and I was very much in awe of what you've accomplished, ladies. So what makes you different from others in your field?
Well, I guess
don't be shy here, because I really want you to point out, or I will.
So it goes kind of back to the beginning, and presumably you're seeing a picture up here of me back when I actually graduated from OSU as the first woman with a degree in construction engineering management.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's great.
I do have to clarify, though, OSU is not Oklahoma State or Ohio State, it's Oregon State. And a lot of people say, well, what's construction engineering management? Well, there's an association called Association of General Contractors who got with Oregon State and said, we need to create a program where when people graduate, then they're ready to come to work for us. So that was the program. I moved from there into my first job as a construction equipment with a construction equipment manufacturer. There, and in all my subsequent roles, I was either the only woman or usually the first woman in the executive arena when it came to those positions.
You were a pioneer in so many ways. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I would say the other difference is back to my background was a combination of sales, marketing, and operations. Most people start in one track and pretty much end up in that track. In my case, it was back and forth. So it allowed me, when I was on the sales side, to be more cognizant of going to operations and saying, can you really do this or not before I commit to the customer? And conversely, on the operations side, trying to be a little more flexible. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that makes me most different
here
is
it comes.
all of those years.
Here it comes, audience. Get ready. Here it comes.
I've played golf. And I know it attributed to two of the positions that I was recruited to was because I played golf.
So let's tackle this golf thing. Why do you think golf is such a phenomenal business tool?
Well, the example I would give is back to because when
look at the pin. Everybody who's watching,
and I'll talk about the pin in a minute. Before we get to the pin, obviously in a manufacturing environment, as I've said, I was pretty much the only woman. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were a lot of association functions that manufacturing companies participated in. Always there was some type of golf event or golf function. So when I played, I was there and I was included. So when you talked earlier in my bio about inclusion,
yes,
I wasn't off doing something else because I didn't know how to play. I was part of the group and part of the team. I was included.
Gotcha.
Okay? The other thing that I would say about the pin is that I started wearing, well, back, of course, in that day, you always wore suits, too.
Right.
And so I would go into a meeting where I might not know number of people in the meeting, almost exclusively men. They would see the pin, and somebody would immediately ask, you play golf?
Boom. You got a conversation.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so that would lead to a discussion of tournament or whatever. But that now brought me credibility. So I'd walked into the room at neutral, and now just because of the golf conversation, there was positive credibility.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And golf is not easy. Golf is not an easy sport. So, that just says you know what you're doing. And I think you do add some of your processes and everything else to golf.
I'm
you
sure.
have to.
Well, certainly my metrics.
So when people call you and want to work with you, tell them what they can expect when they work with Diana.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I would say is I consider all of my client work a project, even if I work with clients for several years in a row. And what a surprise, we develop metrics or objectives before we would start on a particular project. And then when we've met those objectives, the project is complete. So that would be the one way I'd describe it. The second and this can require a little bit of mental visualization here, but the name of my company is VPT Enterprise.
I wanted to ask you about that because we were talking about that. What does VPT Enterprises stand for?
Okay.
Tell me about that.
So V is for vision, which is helping with the objectives and the metrics of what we're going to accomplish on the particular project. P is for planning, which we're going to do in terms of people, process, and profit. T is for follow through. Now, it's not FT, it's T for follow through, that we're completed it in the manner that we wanted and met your expectations.
I love that.
I would say some people might describe me as kind of that tenacious, persistent pit bull person that gets the job accomplished.
I agree with that. I've had, as president this year of our National Speakers Association, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with Diana, and she's a very nice pit bull, but she's still a pit bull, but we love her because our technology within our chapter has just excelled where it's never been before, and I give Diana and her team tremendous credit. And that's what it takes. That's really what it takes. Okay, so tell me about, you've already told us a little bit more about your book. Is there anything else you want to say? Hold this on up for our audience
Sure.
that's watching. How can they get that book?
Okay. Just to clarify, though, I didn't write the whole book. I have
Okay,
a chapter in the book. But the easiest way is to go to Amazon, Google, or search, I should
Right.
say, Timeless Principles. The book is written by Alan Fishman, who is the founder and CEO of the Alternative Board, which is the group that provides the advisory boards that I talked about earlier.
Wonderful.
But the chapters in this book are all, as you can see, principles from real life experiences. So I do encourage you to go get it, read it, and probably apply several other things.
I agree. I got to get me a copy of that book because, yeah, from just from what you've spoken about with just your chapter, oh my gosh. Yeah, I want to get that book. Okay, so if our audience wants to get a hold of you and contact you, how can they do that?
Okay, so probably the easiest way is to go to LinkedIn and search on Diana Gatz, and then you will see the picture that you saw in the very beginning show up with the headline that talked about growth specialist, business advisor, Metrics Maven.
Wonderful. Okay, and so those of us that are not watching right now, go ahead and tell them verbally your contact information.
Sure. So my office number is 972-255-5634.
Wonderful. And email?
And my email would be VPT
For vision
planning.
Okay.
And follow through.
Gotcha. Through
Through.
VPT. Gotcha.
At Diana, Diana, Gatz, GATS.com.
Wonderful. And your website?
And like I said, my website is my LinkedIn profile. So that sounds a little complicated, but it's going to be your www.linkedin.com/IN/Diana Gatz.
Thank you. And also, just as a side note, Diana is one of our absolute best LinkedIn specialists within National Speakers Association in our North Texas chapter. She's phenomenal. She's helped out many of our speakers with LinkedIn. You're very credible there too, lady. Okay. So this has been absolutely fascinating. I'm so happy to have had you on the show. If there's one valuable thing you want our listeners to take back with them, to remember, to take to heart, and to think about before calling you, what is it?
The first is develop the metrics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. People resist it, and it's hard. But it will be so beneficial at the end of the day. And you're going to want those metrics for people, process, and profit.
And profit. There you go. Okay. And then we got vigilance for increased profits,
Right.
and the growth and everything. So I'm excited. Thank you. Thank you very much for being on our show. You are absolutely a mastermind of what you do, and I appreciate you being here with us today. I truly do.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it,
Good
Betti.
show. Thank you, Diana. All right, and for everybody out there, thank you for joining us today. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to have you on our NSA National Speakers Association Power Up to be better, to be faster, to be stronger. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Nice.
Thanks for listening to Power Up with NSA North Texas. To find out more about today's guest or NSA North Texas, visit www.speaker.org. To find out more about Power Up, visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/groups/NSA North Texas. And to find out more about Betti, visit www.betticoffeepresents.com.